Hello and welcome back. My name is Josh. I am the instructor here at the school, and today we are going to be talking about the different flight conditions that you find in drones. I am noticing that the green doesn't show up too well, so maybe in future I'll rather be using something else. The first thing you need to know about these here is that when it comes to drones, we have certain ratings which allow us to fly certain conditions, okay? VLOS stands for your visual line of sight. Again, visual line of sight is basically your generic conditions that you're allowed to fly if you hold a valid RPL or more. Actually, it's known as an RPC now, but I don't really like the change, so I'm going to stick to the RPL. All right, RPL is your remote pilot license. RPC is your remote pilot certificate. They're both the same thing. It's just that it's changed name recently, okay? But if you get your standard initial multi-rotor RPL/RPC, you're going to get it with the VLOS rating pre-installed on it, okay? Your visual line of sight literally means the term comes from the idea that you have to visually be able to see your drone at all times. You need a line of sight using your vision. Okay, if you can't see your drone at any point in the flight, it is not a VLOS mission. So, how does this work? If you have an initial RPL and it has VLOS rating, you're allowed to fly VLOS. You're allowed to fly your drone at these under these conditions, which is a VFR conditions, visual flight rule conditions. Essentially, if you can see the drone, you can fly the drone, except it's a little bit more complicated than that. There are limitations, there are regulated limitations that the CAA, the SACAA, which we'll talk about. If you don't know the CAA, don't worry about it. It'll come up in another video, is abbreviations and aviation bodies. But right now, VLOS. Okay, the CAA, in other words, the government, technically has put limitations or boundaries on what we are actually allowed to fly if we have an RPL. VLOS is this here. By the way, just a heads up with this, when you deal with height in aviation, you talk about feet. When you deal with lateral or horizontal distances, you deal with meters, okay, or kilometers, nautical miles. With drones, we use meters, okay? So, VLOS is away from us, from where we stand, from our current RPS, which we learned in the last lesson. From our RPS, we're allowed to fly in any direction 500 meters away from us, okay? So lateral distance is 500 meters. Okay, that is your lateral distance. Your vertical distance, or going up, is 400 feet. Okay, so what this means is if you are an initially rated RPL pilot, you are always allowed to fly VLOS, and these are the conditions you are allowed to fly. However, there's more information to this. VLOS actually requires that you have certain conditions or VLOS requires that you get certain permissions in play before you actually fly it, okay? You need to be able to prove to the CAA that you're allowed to fly VLOS. But that's a whole separate story for its own day. This is just telling you what VLOS is, okay? So rule number one of a VLOS flight, it's within these boundaries there. 500 meters away and 400 feet high. Anything above that or beyond that is going to be a BVLOS, which we'll cover in a little bit, okay? Rule number two of a VLOS flight is that at all times, the pilot or PIC, pilot in command, can maintain a direct, unaided visual line of sight with the drone for the whole flight. Then you know you've also achieved a VLOS mission. VLOS is done. Let's talk about RVLOS. RVLOS is actually a step down from VLOS. VLOS is where you're allowed to fly your drone commercially. RVLOS stands for Restricted Visual Line of Sight. Okay, RVLOS again, Restricted Visual Line of Sight. It is literally VLOS, but with further restrictions, further limitations. Okay, now, this is where it gets complicated because the RVLOS, according to regulations, says that you're allowed to fly 500 meters away from you, but you also have to fly below the highest object around you within a 300-meter radius. What that means is this. If I'm flying here, okay, and I have a building, let's say I fly my drone 500 meters, and I have a building here that is 175 feet high, and this is my 300-meter mark. This is within 300 meters. What this means is that I could fly my drone all the way up to 175 feet, and I could do it all the way up to the 500-meter mark. So, we're anywhere in this realm of flying, I am allowed to fly. Reason being, because this is within my 300 meters. If this, for example, if we have a building here that is 220 feet, I can't use that. I can't use this building as my RV loss height limit because it is not within the 300-meter band. Okay, so that's how that works. But there are issues with these regulations, and as a result, there are a couple other things that we instructors and the examiners, in fact, prefer to look at when you're talking about RV loss, and it is these conditions here. RV loss is equal to 300 meters lateral distance and 150 feet vertical distance. All right, if you stick to this, you will always be considered within RV loss. Okay, it is an up and down game. You will say, so you'll get some people that say no, it's not. You'll get some people that say yes, it is. Generally, in my experience and in other people's experience, which is why in the drone industry, this is kinda what you understand to be RV loss. This is why, because generally, if you're flying below 150 feet, you're going to be below anything that might cause your drone harm in the skies. As for the 300 meters, that's just it's just extra safety net, okay? Instead of going 500 meters away, you just stick to the 300 meters. So why? Why would you use RV loss? You would use it for 3 reasons. Number 1, you would use RV loss for training purposes. You don't want your drone flying away if you're training somebody on the drone. Number 2, you'll use the RV loss condition for practice, okay? Test flights and practice. If you're doing stuff like that, get your RV loss. And number 3, as long as your registered drone, or as long as your drone is registered, you can fly RV loss flights to gain flight hours. Okay, those are the 3 reasons why you might use RV loss. Notice that RV loss is for private use. There is no money gain when you are flying RV loss. Okay, even if you are in these conditions but you're making money, it is a VLOS mission and it needs to go through the CAA. Let's go ahead and cross this off and move on to the EVLOS. Okay, EVLOS stands for Extended Visual Line of Sight. That's right, it is line of sight, the same as VLOS, except it is extended. How do you extend it, you might ask? Easy peasy. If I'm over here and this is my 500 meter mark and I want to then go another 500 meters, making it 1 kilometer away from me, what am I going to do? I'm going to extend it by putting my observer, spotter, co-pilot, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to put the second in command right over here on my 500 meter mark. If they are on my 500 meter mark and I am approved for an extended visual line of sight flight, then I'm allowed to now fly my observers 500 meters as well, which then makes it a full 1 kilometer away from me. There are fun little tricks and hacks you can do with this, like using another drone as your observer. There are ways that you can get around certain things like this, but usually EVLOS is not pursued. Normally, you're going to skip it altogether and you're going to go straight to BVLOS. Let's talk about it. BVLOS, guys. BVLOS is the most hectic and awesome rating that you can get on your drones. Multi-rotor, fixed wing, helicopter, it doesn't matter. BVLOS will work with all of them. In fact, BVLOS is mostly used with your VTOLs, which stand for vertical takeoff and landing. We'll talk about those abbreviations and stuff in another episode. Right now, let's talk about BVLOS. What does it stand for? It stands for Beyond Okay, it stands for beyond visual line of sight. That should make it self-explanatory to you. If I can't see the drone, duh, BV loss. If my drone is further than 500 meters away, duh, BV loss. Are you seeing the trend here? Okay, BV loss is every single mission that doesn't fall under any of these other categories. If it can't, then it's equal to a BV loss mission. All right. So what are the limitations? People might be asking, well, BV loss, right? If BV loss has that rule to it, then surely you can just fly wherever you want. Technically, yes. Technically, if you wanted to, you could do a BV loss mission all the way on the other side of the world, except that you can't. Because there's paperwork, there's document trails, there's CAAs and government officials, there's things that you need to do and get approvals you need to get in order to fly BV loss missions, okay? So here's the rule of BV loss. The rules are, there is one regulation, and it is the 400-foot mark. No matter what sort of flight rules you are flying, no matter what sort of rating you have, you always stick to the 400-foot regulation, except that your regulations can be broken. Every single regulation in the CAA can be broken, provided you get the right permission and you get the right documents to back your breaking of the rules up. Okay, so this 400 foot, yes, you do. According to regulatory standards, BV loss is still below 400 feet, except if you are BV loss approved, it will allow you to then get the approval you need to then fly above 400 feet. So if I wanted to fly 1,000 feet, I could do that, okay? If I was VLOS rated and I wanted to fly 1,000 feet, absolutely no ways. EVLOS rated 1,000 feet, no, not going to happen. BVLOS rated 1,000 feet, yes, there will be additional loops and holes and things you need to get through, but you can do it, and that is the point of BVLOS. BVLOS opens you up to the idea of expanding your flying, okay? It also is something else. BVLOS is also where you can't see the drone. So if you fly your drone and you're flying VLOS, 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 and then all of a sudden you go behind a tree and you don't see your drone for 3 seconds, that is not a VLOS mission. That is a BVLOS mission. Remember that a VLOS mission is defined as having direct, unaided visual contact with your drone. Direct at all times. You need to be able to see your drone. If you can't see your drone for 1, 2, 3 seconds, it is not a VLOS mission. Okay? That's where BVLOS comes in. If I'm flying my drone on the other side of this wall, it doesn't matter that it's even in RVLOS conditions, right? That's not going to be even 20 meters away. But I can't see the drone. Therefore, it is classified as a BVLOS mission. And that is the difference between those 4 things there.